We're going to go down to Mark Steyn, who's been watching this unfold. Mark, you there?
Yes, I am, Tucker.
What do you make of this? I mean, this is not, if you had to make a list of predictions 2 years ago, this would not be on it, I assume.
No, but President Trump does things differently. This is a kind of upside-down summit, in a way. It's going to start with him and Kim just in the room together with no one but translators. That's really the opposite of the way almost any international gathering takes place. You know the term, I think Churchill coined it, Sherpas, the people who map out everything the summit's going to agree, and then when 88% has been set in stone, then the leaders come in and basically put their imprimatur on this. This is completely the opposite. Donald Trump is going to walk into that room and he's going to make his own calculation as to whether Kim Jong Un is there in good faith. And it's basically going to be the president who calls it and decides whether or not this process is sincere and it's for real. And that's very different from the way almost any other international summitry takes place in the modern world.
What do you make of this? By the way, we're watching now the president's motorcade in Singapore going to the summit site. What do you make of the way this came about? I mean, I don't think there was anyone who predicted this. And it came out of the president's kind of signature bellicosity, which supposedly gets you nothing, but in this case did get us something.
Yeah, and I actually think that's one of the most effective things. You know, the weakness of the Western world generally is that when we enter into talks or talks about talks, these third world dictators always understand that our priority is to be in a room, sitting down, talking, and getting an agreement. And we'll do almost anything to get into a room and start chit-chatting and having tea and coffee and cookies with the third world dictator. The Iranians understood that, for example, in their negotiations for years with Europe and then with the Obama administration. And this is the complete opposite. Trump's signature style was basically to go metaphorically nuclear on the Pyongyang regime, and then when it was clear that he wasn't like Obama and other Western leaders, to offer the carrot of negotiation. And then just when, you know, Kim was getting cocky, and he decided to start trashing Mike Pence and John Bolton and all the rest of it, at that point, Trump yanked the rug out from under him. So this is a very different style. And in a sense, the House-trained Western leader is behaving as unpredictably as the third world basket case guy. And that's a completely different style of negotiation.
Whose motorcade, by the way, we're just watching pass by. We saw it a second ago. They're heading to Sentosa, which apparently is Sanskrit for peace. There it is right there. This is a man who does not leave his country very often. I think since returning home from boarding school in Switzerland, he's left only a couple of times, once recently to China by armored train. Kind of remarkable that he's left North Korea to come to Singapore for this. What do you suppose he hopes to get out of it?
Well, you know, I thought it was very interesting when he was touring that casino last night. He's actually getting a glimpse of what almost every... I mean, Singapore is spectacularly successful, has one of the highest GDP per capita in the world. If you're an old-school imperialist like me, you think that's all down to Sir Stamford Raffles. And if you're of more recent vintage, you think it was Lee Kuan Yew who's done it since 1963. But whoever you give it credit to, Singapore is a hugely successful society. And so when a dictator of a basket case, of a country with barely detectable GDP that makes nothing that anybody needs except cheap knockoff Viagra, and which I hope performs rather better than their nuclear weapons do. But that guy is getting a glimpse of how modern societies work. And the invitation to him really is to say, we'll overlook the fact that you killed all these people, you've starved all these people, and the carrot for you is that your society could be like every other society in that corner of the world. It could be hugely successful, and you would live better, because even dictators live badly in dysfunctional societies.
That's right.
You know, the electrical supply in the presidential palace in Pyongyang isn't more reliable than the electrical supply anywhere else.
What do you think he thinks when he lands in a Chinese 747 in Singapore and looks around? Do you think it shakes his faith in the Marxism he professes to believe in?
I don't know that he does. Well, I mean, this is the interesting question. I don't think this guy is a madman, and I don't think hereditary dictatorships survive over 3 generations without having a strong sense of self-preservation. But the self-preservation is more important than any ideological commitment. I mean, basically, Marxism, as Karl Marx developed it in the 19th century, was supposed to improve the lives of the proletariat. In the modern era, for people like Kim, it's the way of controlling the proletariat. You can't control them if you have a free market society in which people are allowed to live lives that fulfill their potential. So he's not a Marxist. He's not a Marxist in the sense of an economic theory. He's a communist dictator, because that's the way you control people, and that's all it is. And when he's looking at Singapore, the question is whether he can make the leap of imagination. He doesn't have to look that far. He can look at South Korea, but he's actually walking around in what a functioning society looks like. That's what he was doing last night. And that for him is a first. It's not like, you know, it's different from Switzerland because it's closer to home. And they did it in even less time. Now, as I said, I think Singapore has a lot to do with Stanford Raffles and all that. But if you happen to think it's all to do with Lee Kuan Yew, Lee did that in less time. He's done it in, what is it now, 55 years. So he's actually built that society, built modern Singapore in less time than the Kims have driven North Korea, because they've been running that now for an extra, whatever it is, 10 years on that. They've actually driven that joint into the ground. This is what you can do if you're actually building a society.
The first thing that Lee Kuan Yew did was eliminate corruption, though, which might be a stumbling block for the Kim regime.
That's true.
Mark, will you stay with us? We're going to be in rolling coverage for the next hour, if you would.